This is Sports 225, Baton Rouge's longest running and best TV show. Now in its 18th year, if you count those 16 years of Sports Monday, and we do. Sports 225 is brought to you by Breck. Remember, it all starts at Breck. Now, here's your host, Lee Feinswalk.
Good evening. It's the end of a season for us. Sports 225 kind of coincides with school. So, we're kind of like a August to June kind of show. In fact, in the old Sports Monday, we never went past April, hardly ever did a May show. This year, luckily for you, we've gone all the way to June. And tonight, William Broussard, the Southern University Athletic Director, is with me, and then later on, Scott Rabelais of The Advocate. And we've got a lot of good issues to talk about with both of them. Mr. Broussard is finishing up, let's see, how a year and a half?
Year and a couple of months.
Yeah?
So, yeah.
And
2 months, actually, a couple days ago. So.
Now, interesting resume. You're from Crowley, went to Northwestern, played football there.
I did.
And before we get to the other things you did, in today's world, is it important to have played football to be an athletic director? And I don't mean that, it seems like so many athletic directors now are just bean counters. And they're CEOs, right. But football's so important.
It's there's such an eclectic mix of people who are athletic directors now. It's probably a more diverse group of individuals now than it's ever been. You go back 30 to 40 years ago, and it was either someone who was also a head coach of the most prominent team and athletic director, or someone who's a retired coach, who knew a little bit about athletics and travel budgets and all that, but. Considering so many things that we have to balance now, academics, compliance, finance, et cetera, you're starting to see a lot of people from the private sector, a lot of folks who are former athletes, a lot of folks who are former coaches, and really a lot of everything in between who are becoming athletic directors now. So it's a pretty diverse group now.
In your case, he went and you worked, correct me if I'm wrong, worked at Northwestern, but also you went to Arizona for a the Bit?
I was at the University of Arizona for about 6.5 years. So I started out working in college athletics at the University of Arizona.
Yeah, who was the AD there?
The athletic director was Jim Livengood.
Yeah, I know Jim.
Just resigned from UNLV here a couple of weeks ago, which is where he went after Arizona. But I was there for 4 years, worked in academic support directly with the student athletes, and then took a couple years away from that to finish up my doctorate. Took a teaching position, worked in student life, and then had an opportunity to get back into intercollegiate athletics at Northwestern State.
So that must have been kind of strange, almost like going home again to Natchitoches.
It was. It was a good homecoming. There's a lot of things that you don't get to see when you're a student athlete. You spend so much time practicing or on the road for competition, and then going directly into the off season. I was in the honors college there, so had full course loads on top of that. So getting back to live in Natchitoches for 4.5 years. To work there and live there and get involved in some civic organizations and get to know some people that I only saw in passing when I was a student athlete was a great experience and good career development for me.
Well, I was telling the story. One of our mutual friends is Doug Ireland, who's the sports information director at Northwestern State. He's been there a really long time. And when this show is called Sports 225, but we used to be Sports Monday. It started in 1995, and it evolved into this just a couple of years ago. So the show used to be phone call driven, and Doug was in Natchitoches, but some guys at the office of The Advocate from where I used to do this show only on my night off, which was Monday. And somebody called me and said, hey, you got to call, you got to be the first caller. So Doug Ireland was the first caller. I don't even remember what he called in about and whatever, but and in fact, later on in the show, Scott Rabelais will be here. He was the first guest. So maybe Ireland called Rabelais. I'm too lazy to go look that one up, but whatever. But Natchitoches is cool though, because Northwestern State's a cool little college, and the honors college there is one of the best kept secrets in Louisiana in a lot of ways.
It is. It's a great school. Louisiana Scholars College is the state's designated honors college. A lot of people don't know that. But, great school. I had great professors. I don't think I had someone who didn't have a PhD who wasn't at least an assistant or associate professor until my senior year when I was just filling up some classes in my minor. But to be able to work with individuals who were schooled. My major professor was a Marshall Scholar.
Wow.
It was a really good group of individuals that I worked with there. Really good cohort group in terms of the students. I love telling the story about the 3 suite mates that I had. One of them is a medical physicist who's finishing up his PhD right now. at University of Texas down in Houston. One was a neurobiologist who finished at LSU, who teaches at LSU now, and one has a double PhD. Went and did his PhD at Mississippi State, then did another one at Ohio State, then went and worked at MIT, and now works at the Oak Ridge Nuclear Facility.
So basically, you disappointed the Swedes
I
by
was the
going
runt.
into athletics.
I was literally the jock. Like I was the dumb jock in that group. Like a couple of those guys played baseball, but yeah, I was the with the PhD in rhetoric from a Pac-12 school. I was the runt of the group. So
PhD in rhetoric from a
really good group of guys that I got to go to school with.
At what point did you start gearing yourself to perhaps being an athletic director and getting into athletic administration? Or is that something that just sort of happened along the way?
It found me as much as I found it. I went to graduate school with every intention of going, the assistant professor, associate professor, department head, chair, dean, provost route.
Right.
And the research that I did once I finished up my master's degree was on student athletes, particularly black male student athletes in the revenue generating sports. And the more I was working with those individuals. I was running study hall. At the University of Arizona. That was my primary job. So I was working directly with a number of those individuals. Gilbert Arenas was a student that a student athlete that I worked with, and he was one
pretty
of those
good basketball player in his day.
Right, and came into college and was a great student, but obviously there was another goal for him, with getting to the NBA, and but working with that group of students and doing research on them and really developing an affinity for them. And taking a lot of joy in seeing them not only succeed, on the field of play, but doing well in the classroom and matriculating towards graduation. That became something I became more compelled to and more interested in than the research and being a scholar. So I set out to do both. And the job that I took at Northwestern State, where I was working as an assistant athletic director and eventually an associate athletic director and running external relations, also gave me the flexibility to teach. So I adjuncted in the English department. I was an assistant professor of journalism for a couple of years. So I was able to do both of those things that I really liked. So it wasn't like I gave up one for the other.
Well, we're going to talk about how he got to Southern University and the challenges that he has there and the good things happening. But in lieu of that, with your dissertation, so in a nutshell, because we don't have that much time left in this segment, should athletes get paid?
I don't think so. One of the conclusions I came to was that if you truly evaluate, the academic scholarship, and attach a cost to that, you really do find that the amount of compensation that's given to student athletes is pretty significant, in the sense that if you start to try to attach a value to books, meals, room board, and then the value of a college scholarship or of a college education towards someone, whether they become a professional athlete or not over the course of their lives, is a pretty substantial payment. And reward. We just have to keep the promise of matriculating them towards graduation, and that's the biggest challenge for us, is to make sure that investment pays off. But in short, I would say no, I don't think so.
All right. Well, guests on this show don't get paid either, so just so you know. Okay, good. He's William Broussard. He's the Southern University Athletic Director. I'm Lee Feinswag. We'll be back with him after this break on Sports 225. Although we do try to give some of the guys cases of Powerade now and then.
Well, that's fair. Yeah.